These last couple of weeks, we talked about how life is subject to change. I mean, it's been a crazy couple of months for all of us. And honestly, the foreseeable future is looking a little bit different as well. The thing you keep hearing us say is while life changes, God doesn't. One thing that I've learned these last couple of months is we all have something we could probably change in our life. When it comes to making a change, it's easy to see we need to do something, but it's really difficult to do what actually needs to be done. But why is that? If we know we need to make a change that's for the good and it benefits us and other people around us, why don't we just do it? I think there are a few reasons why this can be so challenging. First, we're afraid to fail. Nobody ever wants to fail. Second, we're afraid to stand out. We want to care, but not too much. We like attention, but we don't necessarily want the wrong kind of attention drawn towards us. We don't want to be seen as someone who tries too hard, so we keep doing what we've always done, so we don't draw too much attention to ourselves. Another thing we do is we don't attempt change because it seems overwhelming to us. You know, between school, homework, practice, maybe a job, figuring out what life looks like being quarantined, or working on something to make your life better just seems like a lot of time that we really aren't sure we want to invest in. Now that I probably kind of come across as more depressing, I actually have some good news. Making a change is possible and it can benefit you. Today we're going to look at a passage of scripture from a letter written by James. I love the book of James, one of my favorite books in the Bible. Now James was the half-brother of Jesus, and James didn't always believe that Jesus was the Son of God. To be fair, it'd be a little tough to be the brother of Jesus, to share a bedroom with Jesus, right? But after Jesus died and then he came back to life, James knew that Jesus really was God's Son. And before we get to what James said in his letter, let me give you just a little bit of background of what's going on. During one of Jesus' last talks with his followers and his believers, he told them that they would be his witnesses in their hometown, and beyond that they would take Jesus' messages of grace, forgiveness, and the gospel to the very ends of the earth. And Jesus was telling them to make a change. He was telling them to move beyond their comfort zones and to go out into the world. Now, this was a big vision that would make a really big impact. But at first, that didn't happen. See, Jesus' followers were on board with the gospel, but the idea of carrying out that gospel message around the world was intimidating or overwhelming. So most of them stayed right where they were, and then something changed. The early Christians started to be persecuted for their beliefs. Some were even being put to death. This crackdown on the church caused people to scatter from their city and to scatter from their homes, which is exactly what Jesus told them would happen. This dramatic change in their lives propelled them to share the gospel, and it propelled them to share the gospel not only just here, but in new places, growing their faith and depending more on God. The early Christians were in a crazy time whenever Jesus wrote to the new Jewish Christians in his letter. One of the things he said was this in James chapter 1, verse 2. He says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy." Well, time out, right? Consider it joy when you experience trouble? Sounds kind of crazy, especially because this wasn't just any kind of trouble. This was a kind of trouble that could lead to death. But James wasn't finished. Check out what he says in the next verse, verse 3. He says, "For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow." Now, we're familiar with endurance, but we probably associate that word endurance with athletics. When we train and push past our limits, over time, our bodies will acclimate to meet what those new limits are. and we push through the pain and we push through the struggle of any kind, including the struggle to change, we don't just become better, we develop a personal endurance. And James says this in verse 4. It says, so let your endurance grow. For whenever your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. James is saying that practice makes perfect. In other words, pushing through the pain and the hard stuff, enduring, doesn't just make you better at the thing that you're working on, but you're actually learning how to change. Now, when you have this perspective, every change you face is another opportunity that you have to grow, not just personally, but also spiritually. Think about it this way. God can change the way you see change. When it comes to change, we tend to focus on all the negative parts of it, all the trouble that comes with it. But when we see change as something into every area, we see that it's more about becoming better than it is about becoming uncomfortable. When we view change this way, the way God does, we recognize that it's all about growth. It's a positive thing because it's all about growing as a person, a friend, a daughter, or a son, and getting stronger and tougher and developing better character. James tells us when we trust who God is and what He's like, we can be sure that God is doing something in us. No matter how uncomfortable the change may be, whatever we have to do to endure and persevere through the change, it's worth it because there's a bigger picture that God is painting in our lives. Even though change is challenging for us right now in the season that we're in, it honestly can get more complicated as we get older. You'll exchange your schoolwork for a career and what that's going to bring. You might exchange dating, having a boyfriend, girlfriend for marriage. You might exchange your family now for maybe one day having a family of your own. When you face change now, you'll be better prepared for even bigger challenges in the future. Now, I want to encourage you to change the way you see change. Here's what I'm asking you to do this week. I'm asking you to change your perspective on the things that you see in front of you. That thing that you know you need to change. I'm asking you to see it as an opportunity to grow your faith. But instead of saying, I'm working hard to change this one thing, say, I'm working hard to become a person who changes things. Maybe even tell a few friends, maybe your parents or your small group leader, about the change that you want to make. Ask them to encourage you. I believe that it's important for you to have people who give us encouragement that we need in our lives. So invite other people into your change process. Now, as we close out this series, I want you to pick one area that you think you need to change or that you believe God is calling you to change. And then change the way that you see it. Decide you'll at least begin to think about it differently. Decide to think of it not as changing what you do, but as working on who you are. And trust that God will help you get there. It's important that we talk about these things going on in our life and the emotions we face. If you haven't already, I want to challenge you and encourage you to reach out to your small group leader. Reach out to Kaylee. Reach out to myself. Though we aren't able to meet in person, we love you guys. We care about you guys, and we are here for you guys. Love you, and we miss your faces.